So next up, we have Alberto from Open Nebula, who will present to us, if I can get his presentation on the screen, about how Europe builds its sovereign edge cloud. So,
hello, everyone. I guess this is working, right? Okay, so, well, first of all, thank you very much for to Mirko and Gabriele for the invitation to present this to you. This is not strictly a Linux Foundation Europe project, yet, probably. So, maybe. I'm just going to talk to you about a number of initiatives in which we, as Open Nebula Systems, but also as a member of Linux Foundation Europe, we expect to see in the near future a number of very strong and fruitful interactions with the rest of the Linux Foundation Europe membership. Okay, so very quickly, just a bit of context that I'm sure most of you already know. We've mentioned this morning the concept of geopolitics, so the role of open source in European geopolitics, and this concept of technological sovereignty and digital sovereignty that I'm sure you're more than familiar with. So in terms of cloud and edge computing, what we've seen in the last few years is an increasingly explicit support from the Commission and other institutions at European level to support not only the development of European technologies for cloud and edge, but the development of open source technologies, European open source technologies for cloud and edge. And this comes from a number of analysis and reports and studies that they've undertaken, including the new industrial strategy from 2021, the reviewed version, which they've already identified that there's a lack of adoption of cloud computing among European companies, the number of gaps, a number of concerns by European companies as to why why they're not going to the cloud, and also a very small market share basically for European cloud providers. So we see this concern being analyzed over and over, and actually it is consolidating this imbalance in the European cloud market to the point that the European Commission has already identified this as what they call the so-called a market failure. So some of the projects I will be presenting today very briefly are intended to address what the Commission has already explicitly identified as a market failure, and that changes a bit the rules in which state aid can actually be invested in producing technologies here in Europe. So edge computing comes into the picture because it is intended to play a key role in bringing some balance to the cloud market. So the rationale is, okay, we have a cloud market that's dominated by a number of non-EU players. We all know the names. Let's use this change of paradigm to bring some new players into this market. Let's use the fact that edge computing is going to involve the deployment of thousands of new resources across the continent to bring new companies in there. Basically, companies like, for instance, telecom operators who already have presence across the landscape, something that the large non-EU players don't have, for instance. So let's use let's leverage this capacities that we already have in the European market to bring some balance to this situation, to this scenario. So this is where edge computing comes from, this idea, this strategic conception of edge computing in Europe. And also you can see from the industrial strategy that already some mentions to the role that open source is expected to play in all this as a way to reduce or minimize vendor locking, reduce the entry barriers for new players, etc. And increase and encourage cooperation and innovation, even among competitors, which is an important thing. So in more general terms, and Mirko is the expert in all this, this is also coming not just from a technical or market or competition perspective, but also from a high political view, how these key technologies should be a tool for Europe to, I like to use the term take control back, because that brings us a few years ago to another part of the Europe, but yeah, to regain some kind of autonomy or also bring some balance to the way in which key technologies are developed and are managed by companies. So again, if you were looking at or listening to the State of the Union speech a couple of days ago, we already see this as a key element in the von der Leyen's Commission. And I want to stress this mention here, the national security imperative, which is something I'll come back in a second as well. So again, during these few years, we've seen from other top figures from the European Commission starting to explicitly link digital sovereignty in Europe, cloud and edge computing, and open source. And this is also having some implications, some real implications in how some of these high-impact projects are going to unfold in the near future. One of the actions, the first actions that the Commission took was the Digital Compass in 2021. They already defined this very ambitious objective of having 10,000 edge nodes spread across the continent by 2030. Now the discussion is what an edge node means and how we're going to do this and who is going to deploy these nodes and bring them to the market. The idea, obviously, is that these 10,000 nodes won't be necessarily controlled by non-EU big tech. They will be controlled by and deployed by European companies as a way to bring some balance to that market. This is also where this rationale is, where the European Alliance for Industrial Data, Edge and Cloud comes from. This is an initiative that was launched in 2021, sponsored directly by Commissioner Thierry Breton, where a number of companies and member states collaborating together, only European member states, well, obviously, only member states and European companies working together to define a number of technology priorities for cloud and edge. And collaborating also in terms of procurement and other discussions that are relevant for how to, again, help a bit European companies in fighting those entry barriers in the market. This is very peculiar, the structure of this alliance. For those of you who are not familiar, we have 3 working groups. One of them is for member state representatives, and then we have another 2 working groups, one for cloud and edge, which is the one that we chair, and there's another one for defense and aeronautics, and this is very interesting as well in this connection, this coming back of the digital sovereignty debate back to where it emerged from, which is also in some member states, France and others, this concept of we need to control the technology we use for national security stuff and defense. So there is a group in there as well defining priorities, but also defining new sources of funding for European defense industry to come together and use open source and also other technologies in their sector. This is also an invitation for those European companies in the room to join the work we are doing with the Commission and with a number of other companies across different key topics. We presented the updated version of this industrial technology roadmap in early July to DG Connect in Brussels. So it's an incredible effort from a number of companies, not all of them equally fond of open source, to produce something which open source is. If you look at the PDF, it's already online. You'll see we managed to put open source quite high on the list of priorities in that document. So I think it's a good effort to have open source recognized from the European industry as one of the key elements if we want to move ahead with this concept of digital sovereignty applied to edge computing. There are other initiatives as well, Horizon Europe program, for instance, in which we are actively playing a role in, and also an invitation for you to look at these programs, this program, and also different calls, and in this specific opportunity, which we hope will also get some input from the Linux Foundation Europe ecosystem. We're starting to build through some specific projects in which we're bringing together European open source technologies. We are addressing some of the main challenges. There are many challenges in deploying an edge cloud, as you know. One of them is the one that we are targeting through the Cognit project that we coordinate, which is making this edge cloud cognitive. That's the word it's been using. So using artificial intelligence for the operation of these highly distributed, heterogeneous edge cloud across potentially hundreds of providers in thousands of different locations, and make that transparent for the edge developers and the edge applications, so they from different use cases that we are working on with, for devices and edge applications to be able to offload pieces of code to a transparent cloud edge continuum that will automatically adapt to the requirements of those applications in real time and address a number of challenges like cybersecurity, for instance. So this is a project that we started in January. So again, we'll be running this for 3 years. So if you're interested in this kind of stuff, artificial intelligence used for edge cloud operation, feel free to contact me. We will be more than happy to get you up to speed and let you know how you can actually support these efforts. We are looking at the automatic adaptation of different things like new providers, new cloud infrastructure, provisioning of new resources, but also automatic adaptation of the virtualization resources that each of these applications need. So it's quite fun, I hope. Okay, and finally, just a couple of slides for this. This is probably last but not least, and actually this is the largest, probably the largest open source project that we'll see in Europe in coming years. Will come out of the important project of common European interest on next generation cloud infrastructure and services, which some of you in the room are very familiar with. This has been run by 12 member states. I'm sorry this is not updated because I think the Czech Republic left, but then we got Croatia. So again, it's still 12 member states with support from the Commission through the next generation funding. These are safe to say thousands of millions of euros for companies in these 12 member states, like the CHIPS, IPSI. So this is a large European or pan-European project of innovation run by companies, European companies, in which open source is expected to play a very, very important role. For instance, through what we call the open source meta orchestration platform, which is the technology that will be managing this on-prem, but also remote access to different resources, computing resources across what we call the data center cloud edge IoT continuum. So we cannot disclose too much because this is going to be, still hasn't been approved formally. We're expecting this in a couple of months' time or so, luckily. So, but yeah, keep track of this because it's going to be quite big. Hopefully, we'll have more information, and finally, just an invitation for you to join us in Brussels in October. We'll probably have more information about this IPSI project and also about the Simple tender. You might be familiar with this, also a very important action from the Commission to produce this tender explicitly asking for an open source solution. So you're all very welcome to register. We'll be in Brussels discussing this with the IPSI, this ecosystem and the European Alliance and people from the Commission and different member states. So hopefully we'll have some more time to discuss then. I'll leave it there and see you around and hope to see you in Brussels as well. Thank you.
Next up is Lucien from RTE, who will give us an overview of LF Energy. If I manage to start your presentation.
Is it working? Yeah.
All right.
Perfect, thank you. So, hello again. This time I will take the hat of the chair of the board of LF Energy to present you this initiative. So, LF Energy is a quite young initiative in the Linux Foundation landscape. It started in 2019, and actually it has strong roots in Europe since two European utilities, namely RTE and Alliander, were the initial strategic founders of the foundation. But first and foremost, I need to say that we owe LF Energy to Julie Goodman. She was the founder, she was the inspirator, and she was the powerhouse of the foundation. And Julie sadly passed early this year. However, the impetus she gave to the initiative is continuing. It is even growing. So, our purpose at LF Energy is to build the innovative technology that are needed to speed the decarbonization of the energy systems. And when I say technologies, I mean both software technologies as well as standards and specifications. So LF Energy created the LF Energy Standards and Specification umbrella for that purpose as well. LF Energy started from the belief that open source is inevitable if we want to face the challenges of climate change. It started with the belief that our companies will face increasing expectations from the society to meet our decarbonization goals. And in the past months, we have seen several catastrophic climate events across the globe. But unfortunately, if we look at the reports from the International Panel on Climate Change, what it reveals is that this will even get worse in the coming years. And even if it will get worse, even if we manage to meet some ambitious decarbonization targets. So our companies will face increasing pressures, and we also believe that no single entity can afford faces this challenge alone. So that's where it started. And today, LF Energy is gathering more than 70 members. They are spanning from energy utilities to power technology vendors, IT technology companies, startups, academics and research institutions, government agencies, non-profit organizations. And LF Energy is steadily growing. What you can see on this slide is the new members and new projects who joined LF Energy during the past 12 months. I can also show you on this slide what we call the LF Energy landscape. That is an inventory of more than 1,300 projects, open source projects that aim to address sustainability topics. Of course, not all these projects are hosted at LF Energy. Only 25 of them are hosted at LF Energy. And I also need to thank the open sustainability technology community for having contributed most of the information that is presented on this slide and regarding those projects. What this slide shows is that there is a strong dynamics out there in the ecosystem, in the open source world, that wants to tackle the sustainability challenges. And this is an asset for the energy industry, actually. So now the question is, how could we guide this momentum so that it can deliver more industrial solutions? How can we make sure that we have higher impact? And among those projects, we currently have 25 projects hosted at LF Energy. The benefits for projects of being hosted at LF Energy is that they benefit from proven practices that enable them to grow their community, to advance, but also at the same time to fulfill the requirements that are required by the industry for adoption, for massive adoption. And okay, to illustrate the steady growth of LF Energy, I have a couple of figures. So what we observed during the past 12 months is that we observed a 23% growth in the contributors to LF Energy project. That is over 300 developers that are participating to the joint effort. Total commits are growing by 50%, and if we look at the lines of code added each month, it's also growing, so plus 8%. So these figures show that we have a sustainable ecosystem, a vibrant ecosystem. However, I must admit that from our perspective, is not growing fast enough. It's not growing fast enough because of the challenges, the urgency that we have in front of us. So we would like to increase these even further. Besides hosting projects, LF Energy is also carrying out some very interesting research studies that are done in cooperation with Hilary and the team at the Linux Foundation Research. And during the past 3-4 months, we published 3 reports. So the 2023 Energy Transformation Readiness Study, that is a survey-based investigation with some insight on the digitalization and open source in the energy sector. We published the open source opportunity for microgrids that assesses how microgrids can leverage the development of microgrids across the world, and the open source sustainability ecosystem report, that is the one that makes an inventory of the 1,300 projects out there. Last but not least, LF Energy, as last year, LF Energy has answered to a European consultation on the digitalization of energy. This is part of a continuous effort to educate and advise government bodies and regulatory bodies on the potential of open source to support energy policies. And actually, I can say that we are having some impact. Looking at what Mark van Siepert, Deputy Head of Unit, said at the last LF Energy Summit in Paris in June. So Mark said that the open source state of mind will be really crucial in making our 2030 goals happen. Unfortunately, I will not be able to, during this short time, to go deeper into the projects, to illustrate what are the use cases, the technological challenges related to all those projects. Fortunately for you, the next days at the Open Source Summit Europe will feature a couple of very interesting sessions from the LF Energy community. So I invite you to look at the sustainability track if you are interested in the topic. So to conclude, LF Energy is a young but vibrant, steadily growing community. However, as I said, we need more members, we need to accelerate, we need more projects, we need more developers. So if this story is compelling to you, I just warmly invite you to join us at LF Energy. Thank you.
Daniel, who will give us an update on one of my favorite projects, Open Wallet.
Thank you for that introduction. Can only go worse from here.
Yep.
Daniel Goldscheider, founder of the Open Wallet Foundation. I'm honored to be here. Who here is using digital wallets? Who is using the Apple Wallet, Google Wallet, Samsung Wallet, PayPal? Okay, that's clearly the majority. Digital wallets are important. They are important, and they're used today primarily for payment. And in payment, they're great. I'm not sure if you know, but it's actually safer to pay with a wallet when you pay with credit cards. Because if I have a restaurant and you are having dinner and you give me your credit card to pay, I get to see the number, and I get to see your name and your expiration date, and I get to see your CVV number. And if I'm malicious, I could keep that number, write it down, and then use your credit card time and time again. This is not an advertisement for Google Pay or Samsung Pay, but if you use their wallets, they will only transfer a token of that number. So again, if I'm a restaurant and I receive the number through the Google Wallet, I'll get a one-time token. And if I'm malicious and I try to use that token again, it will not work. It will work just once. But wallets are useful for much, much more than payment. You've probably seen the announcement from the European Commission of the EUDI project, the European Digital Identity Wallet. You have probably seen the announcements of Apple and Google and Samsung that they are adding driver's licenses to the big tech wallets. You've probably seen that universities are thinking about how to digitize their academic credentials. So in the future, if you want to prove not just your identity, but if you want to prove that you finished university courses, you're going to use a wallet for that. When you talk to the ECB and you talk about cryptocurrencies and CBDCs, they're going to reside in a wallet. When you think about passwords and the future of passwords, they will likely be replaced by something called passkeys, a FIDO standard. Again, something that is going to likely reside in your wallet. When you think about how to get access to your hotel room in the future, it's going to be a digital key in your wallet. Access to your car, access to your home, your health information, your COVID pass, all of that is in digital wallets. So if there's one thing that I hope you're going to take away from this talk is digital wallets are really, really important. And they are really personal. They have some of the most personal and most important data that they contain. So getting digital wallets right is hugely important. And different entities are in very different modes. You know, you have big tech companies that are interested in wallets. You have the European Commission. The motivations are very different, but what we share, what we all have in common is that we believe it's important that there are digital containers that belong to you. They should not belong to a company. They should not belong to a country. They should truly belong to you. 1 year ago in Dublin at the Open Source Summit, we launched the intent. We launched basically a statement of intent saying we want to do something together. We want to create open source software together for interoperable wallets. 6 months ago, we formally launched the Open Wallet Foundation with 37 members. And today, we announced projects from Google, projects from Ping, which creates the software that Apple is using in the Apple Wallet, and from Lissi. And we're going to take those code projects together with SDJOT projects as a foundation to create interoperable wallets. We have welcomed Google as member number 50 just a couple of weeks ago, even though technically speaking, as we launched 6 months ago, we're still in diapers. And we are going to announce another big tech company tomorrow. This is going to be successful only if we are able to bring the public sector and the private sector together. Because when you think about the credentials of the wallets, some of those are going to be corporate, right? Your tokenized credit card, your tokenized debit card, your university degree, your car keys or room keys, they're all private sector credentials. But when you think about your driver's license, your ID card, in the future maybe your passport, all of those are public credentials. Now, if I try to sell you a physical wallet, and you look at the wallet, you like the texture, the material, the color, and you're about to buy it, and then I say, there's actually one thing you should know. This is a wallet that works just for your driver's license. You would look at me and you would say, what kind of wallet is this? I don't want a wallet that works just for my driver's license, or just for my credit cards, or just for my passport. I want a wallet where I can put everything in there. And I want to make sure that it's interoperable. I want to make sure that it preserves my privacy, that it's secure. And this is a huge task because the European Commission, the Department of Homeland Security, the governments in China and India and Japan and Canada, and even the provinces in Canada have slightly different ideas. So this is going to be a marathon, but we are hugely excited to continue our mission to bring developers together from startups, from big tech companies, from governments, from multinational organizations like the European Commission, to embark on that shared mission to create amazing open source software as a great foundation to ensure that wallets are interoperable and to ensure that there is a level playing field of several entities that are able to come together so that no one company dominates this space. This afternoon, we're going to have a board meeting where all Open Wallet members are going to be present that are represented in the board. So if you have an interest in digital wallets, if you are potentially keen to either contribute software or to become part of the foundation to ensure that there is a broad alliance behind this initiative, please come see me, please see the other board members. We are trying to create this as an inclusive project, and we very much hope that a few of you might be interested. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel. I guess now you know why this is one of my favorite projects.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Excellent, okay. Hello everyone, my name is Sumer Johal. I'm the Executive Director of AgStack. And it's really great to see some old faces and meet a bunch of new ones, and looking forward to getting to know everyone here better. So AgStack is the open source project at the Linux Foundation that aims to create and maintain a digital infrastructure for food and ag. And it's a relatively new project, we're a couple of years young, and just really growing. The first thing that I wanted to mention here, when we think of agriculture, it really is not in the same sandbox as most of the technologies that Linux Foundation does. People often come to like, what the heck, ag? What are you guys doing here, right? You know, and so I really want to make sure that everyone understands that we're really at the ground zero for half the labor force of the world that is employed in agriculture. 70% of all fresh water is used in agriculture, okay? And it can be a massive solution and a massive challenge for climate change mitigation. All three things at the same time, and it is truly a global topic. So I'm really humbled to be leading this topic at Linux Foundation, and I want to really acknowledge the leadership the Linux Foundation writ large and LF Europe in particular are showing in this matter. So what is it that we're really trying to do? So in the digital economy, if data is the new energy, if you will, right? It's used to be called data is the new oil. I don't like to use that anymore. Data is the new energy, right? The source of power, right? And applications, things that take you from point A to point B are the new vehicles, right? Then what we're trying to build is this neutral road, or the infrastructure that enables the creation and consumption of applications and really the unlocking of the power of data for food and agriculture. And that's really our mission. Our mission is not to build applications, which is really the private sector's job and also public sector, but to really create this neutral infrastructure that can be safe, inclusive, and secure. The problem is today, everybody's building their own road. So if you were building a car or a vehicle of some sort, and you had to build your own road, it wouldn't be very efficient, would it? That's really what's going on in agriculture. It's a bunch of siloed digital transformations going on. Nothing talks to anything else. The ag tech revolution is in a sunrise state, has been for a decade, but adoption is very slow. Why? Because no application works on any other infrastructure. Everybody's got their own infrastructure. There's no interoperability. Imagine a farmer in India, right? They're just getting used to using some digital. Now you got 10 companies coming and saying, here, 10 different platforms, use mine, one for fertilizer, one for equipment, one for pest and disease management, one for water, one for regulation. I mean, how's that gonna work? And if you think that's a remote thing that doesn't affect Europe, think again. Because Europe imports a lot of food, and as we'll talk about in a minute, all that is affected by European regulation. So we are actually starting off with some interesting topics. Many of them intersect with the European Union's new initiative around food safety and traceability, around deforestation mitigation, new regulation EUDR, carbon markets. We have a new project that was launched in OS Summit in Vancouver this March on the field carbon model, which is critical to enable carbon credits and carbon markets for agriculture. Digital public infrastructure. This is the asset registry. Our friends in the German Ministry of International Development actually funded this project, which today is the source of those credentials that were just being talked about in the wallet, but for a field, an agriculture field. And of course, a new work that we're doing for enabling AI, unlocking data with security and inclusion. Whoops. This is just a one quick picture that I want to show you about EUDR. The EUDR, for folks who don't know, is essentially the European deforestation regulation. And it states that in order for any of the 6 or 7 commodities to be imported or exported from Europe, the actual land that that food was grown has to be proven to not be deforested. It turns out there are many different models, remote sensing technology, all kinds of data that you can use to do it. The FAO came up with their tropical moist forest layer, which actually for the entire tropics talks about every single pixel and says whether this was deforested or not. But there are hundreds of such models coming out. How is a farmer or a coffee roaster, we all enjoy coffee, going to actually check whether or not this coffee was grown on a deforested land or not? And that's what this whole project is all about. We actually showcase how this can be done in open source as an infrastructure layer such that applications like this can create a score on whether something is deforested based on a public model that exists in a public library at AgStack. We were one of the recipients, as Gab mentioned in his keynote, of the European Green Deal. All of these topics are very relevant for the European context. They're of course very relevant for the global context, but fortunately for us, Europe is really taking a lead in this. So I invite all of you to join our early members and partners, I should really say, who are helping us create this infrastructure. And private sector is absolutely interested in this. It's just everybody was waiting to be, who's the first one to go in, right? Everyone wants to be first to be second. Well, what we really want is leadership here. And I think that open source, as it has unlocked things in the energy industry, in automotive, in other industries, food and agriculture is absolutely critical. And of course, what is our roadmap? This is our call to action from any of you. If any of these topics interest you, come see me. We have a table outside, and would love to see how you can be a member, how you can generally support us. We are talking about asset registry enhancements and scaling, how you can use machine learning to actually scale in collaboration with MIT. There are algorithms that they've already donated to the Linux Foundation to AgStack, where these field boundaries can be created at scale all over the planet. So it's very low friction to create field boundaries. A farm data model, this is some of the large CPG companies who are actually interested in a farm data model so that their entire supply chains don't have to use a new thing. It's all free and available. Model library I was just talking about. First mile traceability infrastructure, how do you get that food to be traced to that farm or field? Carbon data wallet for farm finance. We were just talking about data wallets in a minute ago. Billions of dollars are paid to farmers from governments. How can that be enabled through wallets? And of course, AI enabling the data hub. This is a new project we're about to launch tomorrow. So I hope that you all join us to grow this project, and we really need and want an inclusive and sort of digital-first infrastructure for the world of food and ag. I myself am a son of a farmer, and that's one of the large reasons why we think that farmers around the world really need something like this to be able to build a better future for themselves. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sumer.
Hello. This is working, yeah? Okay. Thank you for having us here today. I'm going to talk about Servo. We also have a booth, and we are going to have a bigger talk during the Open Source Summit on Thursday if you are interested in knowing more details. But basically first, what's Servo? And Servo is like a quite large definition, but anyway, a web rendering engine, which is written in Rust. which is capable to run WebGL and WebGPU content, and it's cross-platform, and it can be used for embedded applications. So a lot of things. So going one by one, what's a web rendering engine is that thing that takes, I mean, very briefly, HTML and CSS files and paint them to the screen. So in Chromium, they have Blink. In Safari, they use WebKit. So Servo is one of those. Rust is a programming language, I mean, a new one in a sense. And yeah, like focus on memory safety. So it allows you to create programs with less vulnerabilities, especially regarding memory and all that. And it also allows you to do programs that use concurrency or run in parallel easier than with other languages with some built-in features. So you can do things faster and also more energy efficient. WebGL is this API that is, I think, well known already at this point to draw things on the screen. Yeah, this is a WebGL example running right now live, and this is actually running on Servo, the whole slideshow, which is using like Reveal.js for the slides. And this is WebGPU, which is like the next generation after WebGL. So you can, yeah, I mean, it's a simple game running WebGPU on Servo, but basically you can talk to the GPU directly and draw your applications. About cross-platform, Servo works on Linux, Mac and Windows. These are like screenshots of each of them. But also we talk about mobile. So since last week, we can run on Android. I mean, this is just a prototype, but it was working last week. We were retaking the whole work. And yeah, even on some Linux phone here on the right, that was an experiment by some contributor to the project. And then, yeah, the other part, embedded applications. So there are many UIs these days. Most of them use web applications, like when you see your UI in the smart TV, they are using web technologies most likely, or in many places. And there are like some applications to develop that. In Rust, there are a couple of UI frameworks like Deoxys or Tauri that allow you to create applications using web technologies, kind of similar to Electron for Chromium. They use different web views, but they are also looking into experimenting with using Servo. Underneath, there is this Delta Chat application that is like a messaging application that have some special WebXCD applications that are basically simple web apps, and they are also looking into experimenting with using Servo. So that's the kind of use cases we are looking forward to have some prototypes and experiments in the future. So about Servo future, we already talked about embeddable. Independent, basically, like Servo is not, I mean, it's a Linux Foundation project since 3 years ago and joined this year the Linux Foundation Europe. It used to be a Mozilla project, started like 10 years ago, but was donated to Linux Foundation. So there is not like a big corporation behind the project anymore. And yeah, after a few years with less activity, we are retaking the activity this year and doing quite a lot of progress. Is memory safe? Thank you to the Rust language, you get less memory vulnerabilities. Is modular in a sense that Servo has a lot of modules. Some of them are used by Firefox, for example, like the Stylor, Web Render, and all others are used in many Rust applications that need to use networking code or things like that. They are using modules that were developed by Servo and are used in Servo also. And yeah, it's parallel because it tries to run, I mean, take advantage of the language and run most of the things in parallel as much as possible. Not everything can be run in parallel, but anyway. That allows you to use all the CPUs and GPUs. I mean, like, these days the devices have more than one. most of the times have multiple, and then you can take advantage of the power of your device. About use cases, we talked about, like doing embedded applications with web technologies. Basically, Servo cannot run the general web just yet, and probably that will take a long path. But if you have a control environment, you know your HTML, CSS, your WebGL, your WebGPU code you need to run, you can just use Servo. It's a smaller rendering engine. It has some benefits in probably performance and also in security, and maybe it's useful for your use case. And then these Rust UI frameworks are looking into using a Rust rendering engine instead of depending on something else because they are written in Rust. So that's also a potential use case for Servo. About the status of the project, We had this roadmap at the beginning of the year. Like I mentioned, the project was kind of with very slow progress for the last couple of years, and this year we reactivated the project. And basically we have this roadmap, and yeah, I mean, we have been doing progress in all of them. Not the last one, but this was for Q4, so we are still on time. So, I mean, like we are doing it right, I think. The project got reactivated. There are a lot of activity. We will know more if we come to the talk on Thursday. We have been doing like a lot of things on events. We have been doing talks in several places. We have here a booth, so we are doing this project outreach, trying to bring more organizations and collaborators to the project, more contributors. We have been upgrading the main dependencies. That's still work in progress, but it's going fine. There were a lot of progress on CSS support. I will show more later. And as I mentioned, we had the plan to explore the Android support because Servo kind of used to have something that was not finalized ever in the past, and we are like making it happen, and now we have a first prototype at least. So yeah, like this is web platform tests are like a huge test suite with millions of tests that the web rendering engines use to check performance and to check conformance, basically. So in this case, we select a few folders, like focus areas, at the beginning of the year, because Servo used to have it actually has two layout engines, and we were like deciding what to do. We decided to go with a new one, and we have been doing progress with that, going from 60 to almost 80% starting in April, so in like a semester, so that's going good. It seems the new engine is working as expected. Like for the plan for next year, we want to keep, of course, maintaining the project, doing more outreach, getting more people around the project, more organizations and all that. I mean, like a web rendering engine is a very big project, so there are many things to do and many potential use cases for them. We want to keep improving the CSS support because now if you use it to browse the general web, you will notice that it lacks some basic things, like, for example, tables or whatever. I mean, we need to improve those things. Of course, complete the Android support is very important for any use case. Probably they want to run on a phone eventually, and most of the applications, so it's important we have a proper Android support. And yeah, get some demos and prototypes and experiments of real applications using Servo underneath. And for that, yeah, it can be a lot of different things. But yeah. About joining the project has been on GitHub since the beginning. I mean, like you can just participate there, of course. There is a chat that is open in this Zulip platform. I mean, it's like kind of Matrix-like, whatever. I mean, like Slack-like or free software. You can just join it. You can send an email to this if you want to know more or get more information about the project. And basically, that was like the summary. I think a bit faster, but anyway, we will be on the booth, and then there is going to be a booth for the Linux Foundation Europe projects during the Open Source Summit. So anything you want to ask about Servo, feel free to reach out. You can test it there. We have some Raspberry Pi devices, some small devices with, 4 gigabit RAM, that kind of things, and they can run Servo. They can run these examples. You can see it live there. And yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Rigo. Next up is Pete. So far we talked mostly about software, and now you will see how open source spreads into different fields of technology, including hardware designs, tooling for hardware designs. Welcome, Pete.
Thank you. Good morning. Is the mic working? Yep. Yeah, excellent. Okay, I'm Pete Lewin. I work for Imagination Technologies, but I'm also on the governing board of RISE, and that's what I'm here to give you a brief introduction to today. RISE is a collaborative project founded by a wide range of industry leaders in many different market segments. It was just set up in May this year, so it's still very new and still developing very quickly. And the overall goal of RISE is to accelerate the development of open source software based on the RISC-V architecture. I'll have a look at that in a moment. But we're doing this really, all of these companies were already contributing quite a lot to the RISC-V open source ecosystem. But really what RISE allows us to do is to pull those resources, pull those priorities, coordinate a bit better, and make sure we're getting things going in the right direction as efficiently as possible. RISE works alongside RISC-V International. So just as a quick check, who's familiar with RISC-V? Most people. Good. Okay. For those of you who aren't, RISC-V is an instruction set architecture. So it's a definition of how a processor works, what instructions it executes, etc. Very much like the ARM architecture or the x86 architecture. But unlike those two, it's an open standard. So anyone can use it. Anyone can download the specs and design processors or models that work to that specification. So it really is that kind of step towards being open in the hardware world much more than the software. RISC-V International is the body that looks after that particular standard, that open standard of what the ISA is. RISC-V International makes sure it's developed and maintained, and all of the responsibility around the actual specifications of the hardware architecture fall under the remit of RISC-V International. RISE sits alongside that because, of course, hardware is no good without software. So RISE is about developing that software ecosystem to make sure you've got the best possible support for that RISC-V hardware ISA. An important thing is that RISE is not just focusing on making sure that all these open source projects run and are supported on RISC-V, but really making sure they're production ready. These are companies who want to take this software into production. So it's around making sure it's high quality, it's well tested, and it's very performant. Okay, so really good quality support for the RISC-V architecture, and make sure that support is as good as it is for the older, more established architectures. Initially, we've broken this area, this huge space, down into eight different areas that is our initial focus. So things like compilers or system libraries, debug, profiling tools, all of these things that you need to have to be able to develop software. And it's broken down into those, and essentially there's a working group for each of these that looks at each of those areas and understands what the landscape's like in each of those. The kind of working model for RISE is that the companies all get together. They work out what the requirements they have are and what the gaps, what they see as most important things that are missing or are not yet high enough quality in various different open source projects, as we saw earlier. Pool all of those together, work through them, work out which are the highest priority ones for RISE, and then deduplicate those as well, so make sure that we haven't got 3 companies all working on exactly the same bit of exactly the same code and just duplicating effort. So it's really around that coordination piece, make sure that all these companies are working on the right things at the right time in an effective way. Once you've got that kind of list of priorities, they're broken up into the 8 work groups we saw on the previous slide. So we have an action list of what we want to do in compilers and tool chains, what we want to do in system software, etc. Thank you. Once we've got that list, I think an important aspect is that RISE doesn't start its own projects, generally. And it doesn't create a fork of existing projects, right? It works in that upstream project. It contributes to the existing project. It's not adding to any fragmentation. It's really about working in the upstream project and ensuring that we contribute to those projects where we see it will be most beneficial. So finally, I think the last slide on all of them is join. So if you have any interest in RISC-V, please consider joining RISE. We are focused on a transparent and open collaborative nature, so you can come, the wiki is open, you can go and look at that and see what RISE is doing, whether anything in RISE really interests you or not. If it does, there's a range of different membership options. I'm at the table out there this afternoon if you want to come and ask more about those. You have to be a Linux Foundation Europe member sure you all are, you also have to be a member of RISC-V International. But we'd be really excited for growing this membership and getting as many contributions as possible, so please do consider it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is David Pavlonis. I work with the Linux Foundation, lead business development for the CNCF, Cloud Native Computing Foundation. I work directly with Mike Wooster, which some of you may know. So what is CNCF? Well, first off, our mission. Our mission is to make cloud native computing ubiquitous. This is Priyanka Sharma, our director. So how do we do that? How we do that is by hosting critical components of the global technology infrastructure, including Kubernetes, Prometheus. You've seen these before. And then also hosting our developers at large conferences, our KubeCon, Cloud Native Cons, so I'll go more in depth later on. First off, the video. We'll hopefully see if it works here. This is from our Kubernetes
went off and did a lot of coalition building to eventually form the Cloud Native Computing Foundation.
We set a hard milestone for 1.0 to be OSCON when we would announce 1.0, and also, as it turns out, CNCF.
It was probably the most stressful thing I've ever done, was trying to bootstrap and navigate the multi-vendor interests in getting something like CNCF off the ground.
There was about 6 months of essentially like bootstrapping work of trying to get this thing going. It was announced June 2015 at OSCON.
It's clear that we need to start working more closely together as a community. As we looked at the 1.0 point of Kubernetes, as it's going production ready, as we're looking at the future of this project, it was clear to us we had to take it to foundation.
My idea at the time was like, I want to go build bridges with, our competing, orchestration. Like even though Mesos has an opinion on something, Kubernetes has an opinion on something, there's usually some common interest. Like maybe we could standardize how storage, is attached to a container. Let's make that work. And so, I convinced Ben Heinemann to come on, the TOC as we called it. There was a bunch of other folks so we had this good mix of folks from different overlapping and kind of competing technologies to kind of start the organization.
We were able to secure a pretty rich base of support, early out of the gate.
Getting that to happen was maybe the most critical piece to the project's success. All the technology aside, without that, I don't think it would have gone anywhere.
And so we believe it's going to take a whole community, and with that in mind, with Linux Foundation and a broad array of industry partners, we're announcing the Cloud Native Computing Foundation today, which will be chartered to take Kubernetes and adjacent technologies, harmonize them, and ultimately progress the agenda of cloud native computing for everybody.
So that's Craig. Next one. Craig McCluskey from 2015. So since then, we've grown to 172 projects, 200,000 plus contributors from basically all the countries in the world. We've also have over 800 members. We'll go through in a moment. So our projects, obviously Kubernetes is still one of the big ones, but still have many other projects underneath there. Prometheus, we're going to have a PromCom in a few weeks. So we have actually next week, we have many different projects that are in our graduated, incubating, and our sandbox projects. Overarching structure, very similar to most foundations. You have a governing board. It's made up of our platinum members and reps from our gold and silver members. We also have our technical oversight committee, which is made up of 11 technical architects who help provide the foundation and some resources to the 170 plus projects. We also have an end user community of about 190 end users. It's somewhat unique for CNCF. These are actual users of cloud native technology, but they're not selling it, and they help provide back communications, back requirements, and what's good and what's bad with the current projects. Our current staff's over 800 plus members with 6 continents, every major worldwide cloud provider and largest end user network. These are our current members. Many of the people in this room are on this list here for platinums and golds, and then our silver members. A lot. We always need more though. KubeCon, so this is just an overview of the KubeCon from most recent in Europe. This was KubeCon in Amsterdam. We had 10,000 plus attendees. We had 2,000 plus are on a wait list. Most of them obviously were from Europe, but from really around the world. And most of the people there were actually the developers, the architects, the people that actually utilize the technology. And really, that's the core of it is these opportunities to get together are really how the community is formed and maintained. And we're going to have even more next year. So we have Shanghai next week. A few people are making the trip from here to there. Chicago in the fall in November. Paris will be our next one in EU. And we're also looking to have India next year as well. We also have spread out to a Cloud Native Security Con to be more focused on the security aspects in the cloud. We did one in Seattle last year. We'll do one in Seattle again and one in Tel Aviv. We have Cube Days. These are effectively mini KubeCons in global cities. We've had 2 so far, one in Yokohama, one in Tel Aviv. We'll be doing India and Singapore this December. And then next year, Australia, Colombia, and Japan. They're still being determined exactly where and when. And then finally, these Kubernetes Community Days. These I think we've had about 25 this year. These are local events organized really by the community. They're everywhere. I just highlighted the ones that are in Europe coming up. But check out our page, GitHub repository. We have many opportunities for that. Opportunities to contribute. So definitely we couldn't be here without the developers working and actually contributing to our project. So this is, if you want to get involved for that. Opportunities for learning and developing. Obviously with training certifications for the Kubernetes, KCD, CCAD. We have mentorship programs, about 100 mentees per year, really part of the Google Summer Code, helping to grow their cloud native expertise. And then our ambassador program, these are about 150 ambassadors picked every year. Anybody can nominate them, there's a few requirements, but really they're people that are focused on cloud native and working in it, and then they have some requirements for that, but definitely encourage people to nominate ambassadors. And then finally, of course, membership. I'm here all week. We do have a booth at Open Source Summits. Here's my LinkedIn profile if anyone want to connect. But definitely please connect, and we'll be here next all week. Thank you for your time.